Welcome back, everyone, to Created Work. This is our series where we dive into how Web3 can be utilized and leveraged by you to build your startup, your NFT project, whatever it may be. Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, we do go live 3 times. Well, actually, we don't go live 3 times a week anymore. Oh, man, we go live on this show for sure. On Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, Ken and I are actually going to be recording our podcast for the Created Economy, where we do our interviews. So we'll be shipping those on Wednesdays as well, but they'll be on a video on YouTube. And on Fridays, we do the news at Creative Briefs. So feel free to tune in if you want to catch up on all the latest news for the creator economy. We are grateful to our friends over at CEX.events. Joe Pulizzi runs an amazing conference. If you want to attend, it's the Creator Economy Expo. Feel free to pop over to CEX.events. You can use the code CREATED and get $200 off. It's going to be an awesome event, and we hope to see you all there as well. Today, we're going to be talking about the evolving landscape around NFTs and the minting processes and ultimately community building, I think, at heart. And so we've got a number of our friends here today, so I'm going to bring them all in because you don't need to hear me talking. But what I wanted to get into today is really just the process and the evolution of how minting is going through today for NFT projects and state of the art. And also, I think any new ideas we have around better ways or improvements we can make to that process itself. So anybody want to kick it off? I will note that we are joined today by Jenna Hannon, who is the co-founder of Supermassive. And our friend Maddie Bergen rejoins us from the Angel Alliance. Maddie and Jenna have both been on one of the shows and are both actively engaged in deploying smart contracts. So we consider them the experts in the room. So let's jump right into it. What is the state of NFT minting? Maddie, you're doing a mint right now. Do you want to share a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a lot of sleepless nights minting, and I think it's becoming more and more competitive because there are more projects coming out every single day. And I think like our mint went really smoothly. Our dev was incredible, and he really optimized gas fees as well, which is absolutely amazing to see. And I think from like entrepreneurial perspective and like building a project that mint is like so exciting, because once you've been through that public mint, it means, okay, now you can start actually implementing everything that you've been saying you want to do. So for me, it's a really, really exciting time to be. And you know what? You learn a lot from a mint. And I think we've sold around 10% in the last few days, which I think we're going for a slower mint. And I think the reason that we've done this is we have built more of a community rather than building hype around the project. And I mean, there's benefits and drawbacks to that. There's the fact, okay, we have established a really solid community that truly do believe in what we're doing. And it really is amazing to see that. But I think the stereotypical like NFT project is like, oh, if you don't sell out within like a day, then it's like, that's not good. And I think from that perspective, I also want to bring a different perspective on it, where it's like, it depends on what you want from the project, because if you're trying to build like a long-term project with sustainable goals, I think that longevity is something that really has to be considered. And like, I think what Angel Alliance did, we honed in a lot on like the female led space and like the women in the network, which is, you know, maybe 5% of the whole NFT space. And so what we potentially could have done better is targeting the other 95%. But for me, that mint was just another step in the right direction. And I'm really happy that we've done it. And now we can actually start doing all the exciting things on our roadmap. And I can't wait to slowly build up that value. And yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting time to go through, especially with the project, because I think you work so hard on it and then it finally happens. And then it's really, really exciting when it does. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I of course minted one of your people.
Thank you.
I don't know who she is yet, but I have her, and and I'm happy for you. But I really do think we need to change the way that we think about mints, because we think about NFTs now in terms of scarcity, like, oh my God, there's, 10,000 Bored Ape Yacht Club tokens. And if you get one, you've got one. And then the price keeps going up because it's scarce. But that doesn't really create the community. I don't know if you can really create a community around scarcity. I'm looking really into what goes into creating a community now. And of course, everyone on this show knows that I hate Discord. So I might as well just come right out and say, Discord is the worst way to create a community, because it now has norms around what goes on when you mint. And if you fall outside those norms, you may be not considered successful. Yes, can you create a community around scarcity? I want to know how whoever is typing is reading my mind. I really want to know what creates a community and where is the best place to create it. And I'm seriously studying that. I don't have the answer to it. And I just wrote you a tweet, Greg. You and Jaffe and Gary were discussing community this morning in, whatever it's called.
I saw you were trying to get up, but we were ending the room. I
wasn't really trying to get up. I was trying to, I was just in there going, all right, what are we doing here? And how should we best be doing it?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I know. And I want to keep on discussing it, because I think that one of the things you always hear about Web3 is community. The big difference between Web2 and Web3 is community. But if what you have for community is a bunch of people stepping all over themselves to do, FACO acts and FACO partnerships and FACO collabs just so they can get on the white list, and then the mint occurs, then where's your team? Where's your community then? Where's your project?
Yeah. This morning, actually, we had a space for Alpha Collective, and I was sort of talking about this funnel as I described it. The top of the funnel is really like what we call the audience layer. That's really, I think there's a great post that I shared on my Twitter the other day. And it really speaks to the idea that you're using content to draw affinity or attraction, right? A lot of creators sort of work in that realm, right? Like they put content out into the world. It brings together a bunch of people around a shared interest or something like that. The second layer to that, of course, is then the community layer, which is the conversion of a raw set of people, maybe with a shared, light affinity, into a people that are actually building relationships amongst each other, right? Where it becomes added, like multiplicative, right? Like not like simply like this one beam of effort or energy is what drives all this other action. It's where it starts to multiply itself, right? And I think the last part and the last layer here is the organizational layer, right? Which is that you move from audience to a community to an organization, which is now a more concise set of people focused on working towards an outcome, right? And I think like it requires tremendous amounts of energy to sort of move one person from an audience member into a community member, from a community member into an organization member, right? Like, it's just like valence levels. If anyone remembers back in high school, right? Like it takes like tons of energy to like actually pop something into one of those layers. And so I actually really find it intriguing that our talk about minting has so quickly become a talk about community, because I feel like this is actually what's wrong with minting, to Francine's point right now, is that we're using minting now, and it's probably worth separating, right? Like that there are NFT projects that are like largely like financial vehicles, right? But all hide behind the banner of community, right? And, I've said it before, a Discord is not a community either. The Discord by default is literally just a broadcast mechanism for your audience.
It's a broadcast mechanism with trolls.
Yes, with some of the worst people in the world, right? But yeah, if you think about it, Discord has just become like what YouTube is to, sort of like creators, or, Spotify is to creators. In a lot of ways, it's the audience capture tool for the Web3 ecosystem as well. There is community stuff happening. That's why I actually like to be discerning about it and say, like, I want to see what a Discord looks like post-mint, not pre-mint, right? Because pre-mint is just a bunch of weird people pumping, right? To get the price up and to try to get in and try to get some little advantage that they can earn early in the moment. But post-mint, if they're sticking around and it's not because of literally just like escalating values or, and price increases, then they're actually probably there for a different reason, right? So Jenna, I'd love to hear from you, because like musicians, this is part of the problem that I've observed, right? Is that, and honestly, why Zealous pivoted away from where we were, was that the energy required to get a creator to think differently. And by the way, creator here could be an NFT artist or anything like that, right? But to get anyone to think differently about a set of people as opposed to that being a set of friends, right? Think about the difference in that distinction. And like most musicians, I find, right? Like, just as a relative part of the ecosystem that you're covering, they're not ready for the work, right? Like, because it is so much more energy. When I see Maddie not sleeping and I can send her a DM at any time of day and she's going to respond, because she's working to build those relationships, right? Like, how are you seeing this sort of play out now as well?
I mean, we're early. So we're a different model. So we are minting for artists. And so that will probably look very different depending on the artist. And the way that an artist chooses to nurture their community is also probably going to be different depending on the type of artist, the type of community. And so we'll probably learn a lot once we start running launches with artists. We have in our alpha list, there's a lot of different types of artists. So my guess is that'll look different. To Francine's point, I think don't get me started on Discord.
Oh, good.
Like the community. So I agree with to Greg's point as well. The community becomes work, and part of that to me is actually the format that we're using currently. And so a lot of artists that we've talked to, the issue that they have in maintaining their Discords is it's just an incredible amount of work. And to what Greg is saying of pinging Maddie at all hours, you're basically trying to moderate a conversation that happens 24 hours a day with lots of strangers. It's a very hard tool to actually manage a community. Yet this is our go-to tool in Web3. And so I actually think it will look very different in a couple of years from now in the way that creators and NFT project founders and DAOs are actually interacting with their community, because Discord is probably just not a great long-term solution. It's too much chaos.
We have to suffer through this shit for 2 more years.
Exactly. We actually, when we started building Supermassive, we looked deeply into solving this community problem. But we just figured,
and clearly you chose to do something else.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll get there. We'll just back into it. We were very passionate about working with artists. My co-founder is an artist. And so that just felt like a problem that we were already so well versed, coming from music backgrounds. But we had so many discussions with so many types of creators just about how difficult Discord is to manage a community.
Interesting. Arnold, Abhinav, I know you guys are both building community platforms as well. What are your thoughts, I guess? In this?
Perfect. The right experts are on the chat.
These are the crazy guys.
And I see these guys every week, and they don't
amazing
have answers.
No, I'll just say, no, go ahead, Arnold. No, I was just going to say, Jenna, your point is, I mean, yeah, we're there right now, right? It is a tough slog to, because we're focused on musicians as well and community, and really showing that value of, like, these are your key fans here, and they actually want this, right? And you want this to some degree too, but then there's that friction of that management component. And to your point, that 24/7, interaction and all that happening. And so, we're working through that now, trying to build different tools to try to reduce that friction to help simplify it. But it is definitely, it's definitely a challenge. And it's certainly, kind of coming back to, I think, Greg, your original question, it's around community in general. I think, I guess I kind of look at it like, when I'm thinking about community and NFT and sort of the minting, it's really about the value that you get from that, right? So I think there's the financial mints, right? Where it's really, I'm just trying to make a bunch of money, right? I'm trying to get in early and hope this thing goes to the moon, right? And so I'm driven by that motivation versus, Maddie, more to what I think the approach you mentioned that you did, where it's like, look, it's truly about not only the community, but it's also about the value that we're providing here, right? We're really helping people genuinely. And so being a part of this community actually helps you in a way. And so that's why I want to buy in, right? And so, I don't know, I think that's a big differentiation. I'm kind of moving around a bit here, but I just kind of want to call it. I think that's a big differentiation between the types of communities and how they can be successful, because I think on the smaller end where that value is really there, it's a bit easier to maintain the community because people are engaging, they're interacting. And Francine, I think to your point, or I don't know when you guys mentioned it, but like once the minting is done, that community is still incredibly strong because it wasn't about the mint in the first place, right? It's about what they're actually gaining from being around these other like-minded people.
Yes, well, I'll tell you, Arnold, a funny story about that, because I met a guy named Strawberry on Twitter one night, or Clubhouse or whatever, and Strawberry I didn't even know it was an NFT, but he was like Strawberry WTF, and a lot of people had avatars that looked like a piece of art that he had done, which I later found out was generative art. So I was like, I want one. So, it wasn't minted. I commissioned it because it was an avatar, a PFP that looked like me. And so I have this avatar. And then when I found out that he had moved on to minting other projects, I went in the Discord. And the Strawberry Discord is amazing because they've got about 4 different projects running together in the Strawberry Discord. And some of them are I belong to a project that I now know is called DeFi Friends. And others are part of a game, and they have a game console, and they actually have built a community around the people who play this game. So, and a lot of the early NFTs were like that. They were like game pieces. But what if you're trying to, for argument's sake, help women, Maddie, you don't have an audience like Jenna's artists. They have audiences, and the people formerly known as the audience could be the community. But the people who want to help women get going are people like me, and they're basically mentors, and they're not really game players, and they're not really audiences, and they're not really, I mean, like, what are we in Web3? And now, what are we? And in what space can we operate where we can do the most good, if that's what we came there to do?
I will say to a one side comment on the point about where's the audience. I was at NFT LA last night, and I walked in and was like, where are the women? It was 90% male.
It's still always 90%.
Still work to do.
Yeah.
But there
Maddie,
are
you
billion women's projects, but the communities are there's a different thing that women do for community, and than men do, because even if all of these really successful crypto projects, and I back a bunch of crypto projects that are all about helping women, and so does Greg, but so you still don't see the women at the conferences. Well, guess what? You don't see me at the conferences either. Not because I'm not interested in crypto, but because I'm not interested in what goes on at those conferences.
But Francine, can I haven't been to any of those conferences, but are they, I guess, many of the folks that are showing up in those projects that are showing up, are they more focused on bringing people together and providing like real value, or are they more focused on just random, like sort of FOMO type stuff?
Greg, you go to those conferences.
The conference came to my town. I didn't actually go to one yet.
Oh, okay.
Let me answer that, I guess. I think there's a little bit of everything going on at them, right? To be honest, right? Because I think to some degree, this is like a found family. A lot of people in crypto, it's like a newfound family, right? Like they're just connected to each other. The WAGMI like kind of spirit. I think a lot of people believe that, and I think they want to be and meet other people. And finally, with all the COVID crap kind of out of the way, or mostly out of the way, even though I think I got COVID
for this week.
Right. But I think people are I think there's just an inherent interest in like just being around other people that are like-minded again, which we've greatly been missing, right, for like 2+ years now. I think inside of these events, though, there are a number of interests sort of competing for attention and time, right? So I think all the degens are there, all the NFT owners are there, because they're really just out there trying to get their projects awareness, right? The protocols are there trying to recruit developers to come build on their platforms. The VCs are there because they're trying to find investment opportunities, right? So I think it's a mishmash of everything. I do think, to your point, Francine, that the perception of I don't want to be there is one of the problems that exists already, in there. And to bring it to, I guess, to Mark's comment even, by the way, I don't feel this thing because I have a list that is only women-led projects. So I only look at that. I don't look at my timeline anymore. So I feel like completely insulated in like all the activity in the women-led NFT space. So, but maybe I need to get my head out every once in a while because I'm missing this other context. But Mark has a question here that I actually think is related to.
I want to talk about that because he's put it up here several times already.
Yeah. So Mark's question is: should creators be thinking differently, or should crypto heads start talking in a language that creators can understand? And I will telegraph that up or bubble it out to the broader question, right? Of not really just like creators, but like should all of us who are evangelists for this new modality, how are we designing the space itself, right? And what are we doing to combat the problems in the space to make more awareness viable, right? And this ultimately ties back into our minting strategy talk, because I want to get to that at the last part of this. But to this point, Abhinav, what do you think? Like, should creators be thinking differently, or should the crypto people, sort of be changing what they're doing? And I'd love to hear from everyone, on this topic.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to see kind of, talking about events. I've been going to lots of smaller events, and now I'm kind of at one every night. And when it's smaller, you get a bit more of a sort of like a split up crowd. So you've got a developer event, you've got creators, you've got artists, you've got investors, you've got just the curious. And so you see the full spectrum, and then you can see the language change at each different type of event. So I think people are starting to do that. I think at the big stage where we're trying to address everybody in a space that's building so quickly, because we're trying to move quickly, I think the language can get a bit complicated. So I think having the right forums for each crowd, I think, is important, and acknowledging who is at event, or who's at that specific space. So I think it's tailoring really what's essential. And I think in terms of creators, I think to your point, I think tailoring the language for creators is one thing, but that's just the first rung. After that, then the creators have to then tailor their language for their fans, right? Francine, you've talked about how you have to explain crypto to guys who have been in your community for a long time. It's
I mean, I'm explaining crypto to 80-year-olds, you know, and 60-year-olds, and I'm not going to ask them to change their, you know, I'm not going to change them. They're not going to change their language. So how does the creator meet them? And I don't think it's a language question, Mark, as I'm listening to your question. It's more I'm coming back to shared values.
I think for NFT communities, I think there's kind of 5 buckets, right? There's what they need what they can focus on. There's the art, right? So you can go deep on the art. The art itself can be compelling. And so that's not really a debate. If you like it, you see it, you get it, right? I'm in, I really like this. There's the financial side. So then that starts to get into the scarcity, and that's somewhat artificial. And so that part is probably being over exaggerated at the current stage that we're at. The part that I think that some people are doing a good job of is connection. So the third one, and purpose. I think there's new communities now that are doing a great job of that. And then the 5th part is utility, right? And so that's the part that's really everyone needs to do better, right? That converting this connection, this investment into what is this actually going to do for me. So I think breaking it out into those areas and making sure you're covering and providing value for all of those areas is probably a way to start explaining to people what they're going to get out of it. What is this project going to deliver for them?
Sounds like a thread in the making there, my friend. Actually, Mark had a related question. He's like, how can you buy an NFT if you don't know what you're getting? And I get, to your point, Abhinav, like there may be one or more of those things in play, right? At any time, like when you're deciding to buy, for example, let me ask a different question. I hear lots of people say the community is amazing. What does that mean? Right? What do you think people are actually saying? Right?
I think most of it's bullshit, to be honest. I mean, the community is amazing means we have 34,000 people titularly in our Discord. But, is the Discord actually useful? Like for instance, the Rally Discord. The Rally Discord has now become useful to me, but for a long time it wasn't useful at all. It wasn't talking.
What was the change then, I guess, that made that happen?
I think they got more creator success people in there, and they were more customer focused or, person focused. But, about buying an NFT, if you don't know what you're getting, it depends on what you're buying it. I don't know what I'm getting in Maddie's NFT from the standpoint of the piece of art, but I didn't buy it for the piece of art. Although I sure hope I get a nice one with a motto that even pays, reflects my well-being or my sense of identity or something like that. So Maddie, if you have a chance before but I mean, the whole idea of buying a pig in a poke, you buy an NFTU is even worse at that. You buy this box, a rare box. What's in the box and how much is the box worth? Vivi does that too, and how much is that going to be worth? Well, that's kind of an investment box, but I don't want, I didn't say community was bullshit, Mark. That's not what I said. What I said was that the way they are creating community in some of these groups is bullshit. But I didn't buy your.
Oh, wait, maybe Mark is saying he's the wisest person in the room, and he's saying.
Oh yeah, right. He must be, because I certainly am not. But Maddie, I bought the NFT for what I think you're going to do, and the fact that I'd spoken to you, and I knew that you understood what what you wanted to do and how you were doing it. And once again, I've said this almost every week, but an NFT project is like a startup. You look at the team, you look at the project, and then you look at the traction. And if you are interested in the project, you stick around. And if you're not, then you leave. I mean, in theory, I'm in about 50 Discord channels right now. How many do I go to? Well, maybe 3. I check in on Strawberry once in a while and, see if they're doing anything I can actually participate
Of course,
in.
you check in on your dicks.
I do check in on my dicks. I have to check. My dicks aren't going anywhere, though. Dicks never change.
To build on Francine's point, I think my interpretation, Greg, of your question is I think it's support and welcome openness, which is the NFT community has this interesting dynamic, which is once you are bought in, crypto is the same thing. Once you've purchased crypto, once you've purchased an NFT within that project, you are incentivized to go out and market that. Yeah. And so you actually want more people to join the community. So unlike most, I would say, communities that I've been a part of outside of this, it's very welcoming. The goal is to always add more people, bring them in, educate them. And I think that's why the speed of NFT knowledge and awareness has been incredible, so high.
You're kind of describing like how Clubhouse was, right?
Exactly.
Like Clubhouse originally, like the powerful part about Clubhouse was that like onboarding by like the founders, like on Wednesday nights, or
right.
Or everyone taking it upon themselves to sort of like be welcoming and bring people in and catch you up on how to do things. The difference, I would say, though, or I guess the concern I have is, while I agree with what you're saying, a large part of that is really just trying people working for their own financial success potentially, right? Like, and there is there's a modality of work that as Francine was describing, like the distinction between like using it to broadcast versus focusing on success of people, right? Like that's like that switch is really hard. Most people, like Rowley has like a crap load of money, right? It took them a long time though to get to like understanding that was what they should be doing, right? Like in their space itself. And I do worry that, and again, do you remember I was describing all this energy required to move from that audience mindset to that community mindset? It just takes a long time to sort of get through that looking glass, I guess, to the point where you actually realize it. Maddie, you're doing this now, right? Like, I guess when you've got a multi-thousand user Discord now, I see like you and Danny are constantly in there, but a lot of it is support, right? Like so far, right? Like it's really like helping answer people's questions. It's like, it's the onboarding, right? When you thought about your community, who were the examples, I guess, that you saw that you liked, right? And then like, what are the things you borrowed or you plan to borrow, I guess, from some of them that you think are helpful or useful, like going forward?
Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to do with community is Discord is a big aspect of it, whether we like it or not. I have to agree, when I first joined it, I was so confused and the layout is not too great looking, to be honest, and it's so confusing. So I am trying to bring our community into like webinars essentially. So like we're hosting a female founders summit on Saturday, and it's a whole day of, workshops and then networking. And we're having like 2-hour networking sessions. And I think building those relationships is so much more than just a chat on Discord, because things get misinterpreted and you can't build that one-to-one relationship. And I just think there's nothing better than a video call, because you can actually see how people are feeling and see how people are expressing themselves. And you can build a community on Discord. I don't know the strength of that, but I think that's why, especially for Angel Alliance, I want to put such an emphasis on building these connections, because a big part of especially building successful business and being a successful founder is having a good network. and establishing that network. And yeah, you can introduce yourself on Discord, but actually like having people build those connections is, for me, what I think is like what a community is about. And hosting events, whether it's in real life, whether it's virtual, I think that's a big aspect of it. And I agree, Discord, I think it needs to change. It's currently what everyone uses, and
so it's never going to change.
I know. I want to see a different platform though. That's a bit more like,
right.
Pretty is the wrong word, but like
right.
it's just, it
Nothing
can be
wrong with something that doesn't hurt your eyes when you look at it.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. I minted your NFT. I mentor women founders. I really am in love with what you're doing because it aligns with what I'm doing. I didn't know that you were having a female founders summit on Saturday. What's wrong with this picture? Would I have wanted to be there? Would I have wanted to come support you? Would I have wanted to, I'll be in Playa del Carmen, but just under ordinary circumstances, you know what I'm saying? How now should you be communicating with me?
Yeah. So this is one of the gaps, right? But I guess the other question is, how do you make that not exclusionary also, right? So this is one of the challenges I just find very difficult in general in our times now. When we have a user base, a community that spans the whole globe, that is in multiple places, right? Multiple time zones. How do we do this so that everyone can participate, right? Like, because this seems like another huge challenge ultimately for putting these things together. And I think, like, if you're an artist and you're trying to say, like, do a performance, great. Now you exclude 80% of your audience because, you do it when it's convenient to you, or do you do it when it's convenient to the, like, what was that tool, Bandcamp, or one of those ones that used to tell you where your fans were the most so you could plan the cities you were going to be in, right? Like, it seems like we haven't even broached that part of the problem, because, like, you're doing the right thing by holding these kinds of things. But then the second problem comes up. It's like, but that makes it inherently unfair to at least some proportion of your audience, because not your fault, but just they're everywhere now. Like, it's not like,
not only that, but you have to be able to notify them. So if you have worldwide, let's not call them fans, we can't call them customers, the people who bought the NFT, investors, what do we call them in your specific case? How do you notify them that you're doing something outside of the Discord?
I would love to hear Arnold's thought. I mean, he's building a tool to solve this.
Attempting to, Jenna.
It's a super hard problem.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because as Maddie was kind of talking through her journey about community and kind of not just relying on the chat piece, it's funny because that's kind of in the evolution of our platform as well. We really started with that sort of thought, like, yeah, people want to kind of chat back and forth and more traditional. We're just kind of building I think a cleaner space around it, a more organized space, and we started to find that that's really not what people want to do the most, right? So now it's really, we've added things like these concepts of sort of live, group chat live video sessions, if you will, and live, where you can actually jump on and do kind of a webinar and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit easier to connect that way. And it's nice because people aren't expecting that sort of 24/7 reply to messaging and things like that. So, and I guess at a high level, my thought is kind of like what you were getting into, I think, last week, Francine, where there's different ways that different communities and different people want to communicate, right? Sometimes it's through more of a medium like a Clubhouse, where it's an audio, a thing maybe a couple times a week. Sometimes it's actually more of a webinar style, maybe, twice a month or something like that. Or sometimes it is literally, I want to be able to drop a message in and talk to other people that are like-minded, like right away. So I think it's, my thoughts have definitely shifted where it's not one or the other. It's really trying to build a platform that gives many different mechanisms to facilitate that communication, and you as the community or the group owner really decide what you want to use, right? And how you want to do that. So the group may all want to talk into a group chat frequently, but the group owner will say, hey, I'm just saying I will jump into a webinar twice a week, and that'll be how I'll engage with you guys. And everybody's okay with that because they understand what to expect. So
here's a question for the group. Do you believe that these communities need moderators? Does there have to be someone like Maddie leading the charge? Or do you think they can be self-sustainable, to Arnold's point, if you give them different mechanisms?
Have you ever been in a clubhouse room?
Yeah,
yeah,
of course.
Not only do they need moderators, but they need trained moderators.
Same thing with Discord. So this is when we started looking at community tools, one of the things that stood out to us is the best communities had strong moderators. And a lot of the moderators were full-time. So full-time devoted to that community. And the communities on Discord that weren't working were the ones that didn't have assigned almost full-time moderators, which to us was really important because there's just no way an artist can do that. And so that's why I asked the question is you have different types of creators, you have different types of projects. Is it possible to run these communities without full-time people like Maddie who are leading in?
If we use Francine's analogy that every one of these is a startup, can you have a startup without support, or can you have it without success? I mean, maybe you can get away without success, but realistically, like these days, it's normative, right? Yeah, I think you got to have all of those things.
So let me give you an example. Reddit. So Reddit is completely run by volunteer moderators.
I think Reddit is amazing, but I will say that Reddit has gone through so many iterations during which it was so awful that how old is Reddit? 15 years old?
Yeah, super old, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has finally gotten here. And Alexis, and many other people have broken their pick trying to get it, Ellen Powell, trying to get it there. So
their secret, I think, has been the karma point system, right? Is kind of measuring contributor value, having the community rate that. And, so that's something that we're kind of paying attention to. And what crypto does is allow you to actually financialize that, right? And so I think that there's scope here.
Buy Karma Coin. No, just kidding.
Yeah. It's different karma, yeah. So I think we've been thinking about how do you get, so at the moment, how mods are working in the NFT world is you're incentivizing them with whitelist or, pre-approved list, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that is kind of being hacked at the moment. But what we're trying to think through is how do you make that systematic, right? How do you actually make, if somebody comes in, how do you make it their incentive for people to jump in and say, hey, welcome to the community, right? How do you literally make that financially rewarding? So I think I think that it is important to have moderators. That be who they are can change as long as the incentives are aligned. And then going back also to talk about, I think video for us is like Maddie, you talked about, having a call is fundamentally video is where you make connections, right? Like I'm in a Discord with 10,000 people. Even in the communities where I'm active, I don't know anyone until I get on a video call, right? So, and the video connection is huge. So for us, what we try to do is actually use the sort of Snapchat model in terms of asynchronous video and audio and bring that to the community space. So like if I see your face, even if it's a short message, I can at least go, okay, I know who that was. I register it emotionally. I register who that person is. It's more involved. It can never be that with text. So I think what we've been trying to do is make a group video conversation more scalable.
So I love this discussion, but in the interest of not burying the lead entirely for folks who might turn in, let's revisit now. Let's take all we've just talked about and let's talk about this minting process, I guess, now, right? Like now, Maddie, I know you just did one, but you did one in the context of all of the world as it exists today, right? What would we do if we were making the best version that didn't have some presuppositions about how it was supposed to go, right? Like, Jenna, you're designing a minting system for an artist, right? Maddie, you've just literally been through the minting process using like an allow list, fair, and, like some discounting. So I'm kind of curious, like, I'd love to hear everyone chime off. Just like, let's go around and what would be the ideal way to handle minting from your point of view? Like if you could start clean slate, regardless of like any misconceptions you've heard or, pre-existing, sort of conditioning we have around like how it's supposed to be? Who wants to go first? I guess Jenna.
I'm in the hot seat. You know, it's a hard question. If I had to completely redesign it from scratch, our approach is probably going to be different based on the artist in their community. And that's so specific to our platform because Maddie has a single community. Each artist has a different community. And so the way that we're probably going to have several different designs available. And when I say designs, tools for them to build a mint in the way that's best for their community. So I don't know if I have one answer of what like the perfect scenario.
Let me ask a follow-up for you then. What are the patterns? Are there any like patterns you've thought about, I guess, relative to helping the artist sort of like what would be my two options if you only had two, right? Like,
so we tend to contrast to what Francine was saying. We tend to believe scarcity is a good thing for an artist. Because what an artist is trying to do is try to identify their top fans. And that's the difference in what an NFT allows an artist to do versus traditional sales of music. Is it's because of that scarcity element, you are able to identify those top fans. They're going to emerge from your community. They're going to purchase first. They're going to be willing to pay a higher price. And so that is an important element in how we're building the platform. And that's probably, I would say that is not specific to type of artist. That's across.
Well, and it's not specific to, actually, it's not specific to Web3 either, because when I really think about it, I've had a very, very large email list that I've sent a newsletter for years and years and years. And I recently, it's now a Substack, and I recently put a paywall on it. And I immediately found out who my biggest fans were because they became my subscribers. And the other people still are reading, but they're reading for free on the free trial, which is never going to go away because I don't want them to go away. But, you can find out who your biggest fans are, but you don't need an NFT to do that. And by the way, I tried to log into StreamYard so I could answer Mark, and that's how I got thrown off. Then I had to go through this process to log in. And when I logged back in, now that I'm on here with a login name, I can no longer see Mark's comments.
Oh no! All right. Well, the question
I was going to repeat the question of exactly of what would be if you could redesign the minting process, how would you do that? And I guess I'm answering in broad strokes where I think scarcity is one of those elements. The other element I'd point to is one of Abhinav's points, which is utility. Okay. And so I think the minting process is probably going to be more likely to be successful if there's a utility of value to that community. And so that's a big thing that we're thinking about in the platform is we need to build, unlike Discord, which is messy, we want to build set ways where artists can provide value, where they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so that may be done through utility tokens. It may be done through utility that's actually baked into the mint, but we do think that's an important element to a successful.
All right, I'll let you pick who answers. I'll let you pick who answers next.
Oh man, that's tough. It's like picking favorites. I mean, I'd love to hear more from Abhinav. I thought he had some great points on those buckets of community. Right. Would love to hear him build on that.
Hot seat.
Okay, I'm on the hot seat. So I think for me, the market's kind of forcing some of this now of people having to think through 10,000 isn't the fixed number of NFTs. This isn't the fixed price. And I'm watching campaigns that are finding out live exactly what is the volume they should have minted and what is the price, where they're having to cut supply halfway through the process, drop price and refund. It's great that they're doing that because they're listening to their community. But I think that process is really critical because a lot of these communities are forming very quickly. Creators have the advantage that they've had those communities for a long time, so they have a better read. But I think it's really important to get a gauge for what really is the market dynamics of the demand. How many people are going to actually buy versus how many bots do I have in this Discord, right? And what is the price point of what I think is comparable for other for what utility I'm offering. So I think that pure economic assessment, a bit of research is important, and the market's forcing that now. But I think that's going to be something that probably should stay going forward. That discipline.
Maddie, I have a question for you before you fall asleep. You do look up. I hate to say this to you, and I'm only saying it out of love, but you do look exhausted.
Thank
you. But who is minting your NFT? Is it the women that you want to help, or is it the women who want to help those women?
Women that want to help those women, and also men that want to help those women. The support from men has been absolutely incredible, and I think the realization of the problem that we are trying to solve is something that, like, I don't think it should be one specific gender that wants to solve it. And also to the point of like the market sizing aspect, I agree. I think too many projects just automatically go, oh, 10K, that's what I have to launch. Like Angel Alliance is 6,666. And yeah, I think you have to, I guess, question what the demand is, how hard you're going to want to work. And especially like with 10K collections, like I just think you're putting a lot more work there. But it also depends on the project. It depends what you're trying to build. There's so many factors. I think it's such an individual process for each project, because every project is different. And I think it's the founders, I guess, assessment that has to be thorough and understanding what the market is. And I mean, this is my VC brain talking, but like what the market size is and how you can, I guess, market to the correct people.
I guess one thing I'm curious about, to that point, Maddie, is I don't know, is there like some reference or some, I guess, like how do we know, right? Like, should it be 10,000? Should it be 5,000? If you do 10,000, like when do you maybe throttle it back? I know these are sort of big questions, but I am curious just generally, because it even kind of gets to your point, Abhinav, like there's these things that should be considered, but how do we even know like whether we're close to the ballpark when we're planning, or whether we're just way out in left field somewhere?
Yeah. Well, that's half the thing about market sizing. You don't 100% know. It is an estimate, and there's no way that you can 100% know what those figures are going to be. But I think just understanding what you're doing, how many members you'd want in that community to achieve what you're doing, understanding how many people there are in that niche of what you're trying to build. I don't think there's one solid answer, because market sizing is such a subjective thing, and everyone will tell you a different answer and a different opinion and different ratios to use. But I also think it's about being adaptable. If one thing isn't working, then change it. And I don't think that's a bad thing to do that. I think it's actually a sign of like strength in a way, because you're actually listening to what everyone around you is telling you. So yeah, it's a very, very subjective and individual thing, but just trying to do your research.
There are good tools out there now that let you do your research, like IC Tools. There's good websites there. There's decent data. I tend to get pretty manual. I go into a Discord and scroll back up to the top of the announcements and just read through the project and say what did the other projects do. Like go to the start of the Twitter. What was their first tweet? So like understand what other projects that are trying to do the same thing as you do. It's a bit of work though, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll share what I think, or how I think it would be improved. At least I'm curious you're all for all your feedback. I actually think communities they can't start large. They have to start small, right? And so I actually think it makes more sense, or I think it would be an interesting approach at least to try to organize around projects and actually mint not huge things, but small things, right? Like, so kind of a blend of what Jenna was describing. Like, I think like if you're an artist, for example, I would find a way to identify my actual super fans, get them to come and prove that they're willing to stay engaged separately. And then I would give them something special, right? And then I would go find another group and see if they're willing to engage and then give them something special. And instead of like one big 10,000 drop, I would do like a bunch of 250 or 500 drop, right? Because the reality is that like technically we don't need one contract to like be able to sort of like offer utility or do any of these other things, right? But what we get is the buy-in from the people who really wanted to be there, right? And so this is more of a non like, you know, pump and dump kind of like scheme. This is more like where I really want to build a community. I think like what Reddit does, right, for example, is it rewards good participation, which is ultimately what led to it being sustainable over time and at scale and self-regulating and self-governing, right? And you know, I think like Maddie's doing this this webinar on the weekend. Every one of those webinar people should get a special badge, right? Like or a pope or something like that, right? And what you do is you aggregate, and eventually, if we want to fund our projects, now you've got this history, you've got all these working groups. I would then do the large offering, the general admission kind of thing. To Maddie's point, to say like, if you want to support one of these projects, or you want to enter now at the edge and start to work your way into this ecosystem, here's a way to do it, right? And I think like that gets us like a little bit of the best of both worlds. But I'm kind of curious what all of you think about like an approach like that.
You've left us all speechless.
It was complicated for this far into the show.
I tend to agree. I like the approach. So you're saying you have to build some design into the community to reward the best actors. And now by doing that,
right? Yeah, like
exactly. Identify, reward them, and incentivize them to participate at a deeper level.
Metablocks is like that. It has taken Metablocks forever to even get to their mint, and they haven't even minted yet, but they have you know, running your butt off, proving that you are part of the community before you get to do anything. You know, it's like Metablock, the guy who started it, his first name is June Loyaza, I think is his last name. Very interesting person. But boy, have I run through some hoops. And I don't even know if I have need for the project, but it's been interesting following how he develops the community, because of the 60 or so projects that I've been part of so far, he is doing the best job of potentially building an actual community around what he's doing.
I suppose I am curious to some degree, though, the sort of knowing that going in, that I have to do these things and clear these bars to actually get to that point, that sort of gamification around it. Do you feel like the interest could drop off after I actually win the prize, right?
A lot of that happens.
Yeah, I think that's probably a reason why a lot of projects, they want to do everything in one go, because once you've minted, if somebody starts listing these items back on the market, you then have a new floor price. And that's the biggest indicator that people have at the moment, financial indicator. So if you could do it in a way that people got rewarded or bought into it, but weren't able to sell until all of the collection had been minted, that would solve that problem. But apart from that, I think the floor price concern is there.
Yeah, you have to lock them up like restricted stock, you know.
Yeah. Well, and maybe part of the solution, though, is that I know a lot of the reason that folks need to mint often is because that provides the capital to actually execute the project, right? But it could also be that these projects could become like, just like we stake, in DeFi stuff, right? Like, what if I could stake in a project, right? Like, because I believe in it. Like, if Maddie was doing that, I would give her, crypto now to fund the project. Like, I'm buying the tokens literally to fund the project, but I could have done that regardless of I don't need the NFT per se.
Right. That's
right?
exactly.
Actually be willing to stake her project, right? Like, but there isn't a mechanism built into it, right? Like to do that yet.
Oh, and that I think is the big takeaway point of the hour. There needs to be a way to do that. so that you can get in once if this is something you already know that you want to do, and help fund the person rather than, drive yourself crazy trying to do all the things that you have to do to comply with the big thing at the end. That, yeah, that's such a great idea.
A lot of it's distraction, right? Like there's a whole bunch of kinetic energy that goes into optimizing for like a mint, when the real goal, more like a startup, is, hey, how do I raise money by telling a great story?
Right.
And then put together the capital to give me the time to go do and execute these things that I want to go do,
right,
as opposed to inverse. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what happens. What happens is this person does a mint, and then if they go away and do the project, and the people in the Discord are there going, well, what happened to all the activity that was here before the mint? And the poor woman or man who has to actually execute on the project is desperately trying to do what he or she promised in the mint, and
or you actually start working, and then suddenly it's a rug, right? Because like,
that's what everyone says. Exactly. If you don't hang out on Discord, if you don't hang out on Discord all day long, then you're a rug pull. Your project is a rug pull. This is fascinating.
Super interesting. Well, I think this was a great convo. I appreciate all of your time. We are at the end of our time today, so I'm sure we'll find a way to pick it up again next week. Oh, you know what? I really should have written down all the people that are coming on the show, but I think we are currently now booked through the middle of May. So we're going to be interviewing project owners and creators throughout the course of it. All of my friends here are obviously welcome to be here as our co-hosts. I know I won't be here for a couple of weeks with some stuff to do, but so yeah, you guys definitely need to be here those weeks. But yeah.
Well, should you tell us which weeks those are?
I've already created Abhinav and Arnold. So, but the 19th and 26th, I both of those days I have Techstars things like for demo day and whatnot. So I won't be here for two of them. But all of us are welcome. We welcome any new guest. If you have a project, you want to share your success, you want to share your troubles. We welcome all the stories. We don't care how big your project is. It's nothing about size or scale or selling out. I'm less concerned about those things than I am about, hey, what does it take to succeed? What does it take to get here? And how can we help you? Right. So if you at all want to be on the show, either as a guest with us or to like share your story, just shoot me a DM or hit up the Created Economy on Twitter. We'll be happy to have you. But right now, just remember, it's probably going to be sometime in May before we get our next spot. So on that note, thank you, everybody. It's been amazing. This has been a fun conversation. I really love that we spent most of our time on community, because I think that's what this really is about. And I think our little hits and tips on minting strategies are actually definitely still helpful. So tune in next week. We'll be back. We appreciate all your time. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.